According to reports, Mother Angelica, the founder of EWTN, died on Easter Sunday. Undoubtedly, many followers of EWTN, and some other weak or heretical individuals, will interpret this as some kind of divine indication that Mother Angelica must have been a good person and that she went to heaven. Don't be deceived. Teilhard de Chardin, the quote Jesuit priest who was also a notorious modernist heretic and apostate, died on Easter Sunday as well. He died on Easter in 1955. The fact that he died on Easter did not mean that he was good or that he went to heaven. No, he was an extremely wicked heretic who rejected Christ. The sad truth is that Mother Angelica was also a heretic and an apostate. As our material documents, she was a modernist who rejected Catholic dogma in many ways. For example, Mother Angelica and EWTN promoted the Vatican II anti-popes' trips to synagogues, their trips to Protestant temples, and much more, all of which is condemned as gravely sinful in traditional Catholic teaching. She promoted false ecumenism and religious indifferentism. Mother Angelica once commented on a Jewish service in St. Patrick's Cathedral by calling it, quote, awesome.
Did you know that we had a Jewish service in St. Patrick's Cathedral?
When? For the funeral?
The night before the cardinal was buried at 9 o'clock. Many of the Jewish community and principal rabbis had a service in the cathedral for the cardinal. An incredible thing, right?
Oh, yeah. Were you there?
I know. I didn't know about it, but I was there earlier and I had gone home. I didn't know about it.
That's awesome.
Anyone who says that is a Christ rejecter with no faith at all. According to defined Catholic teaching, it's a mortal sin to practice Judaism or the Old Law. The Old Law cannot be observed without the loss of salvation. Pope Eugene IV, the Council of Florence. So, what Mother Angelica declared to be awesome, the Catholic Church infallibly declares to be mortally sinful and a rejection of Christ. In a similar example of Mother Angelica's rejection of the true Catholic faith, she spoke with praise and admiration for the false worship and prayers of a Muslim doctor.
But who are most of the people there? Muslims saying their prayers.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, you and I'd be tough if we were Muslims and we couldn't get down that far. You know, the Muslims, when they pray, the whole body is involved, you know.
Years and years and years ago when I had my spinal operation, the doctor who operated on me, one of them, would come in with his little rug facing east.
Yes.
And he'd say, you know, I feel comfortable in here. May I pray in here? I said, oh, doctor, go ahead. And he would pray, as I've never seen anybody pray. And he used to operate for hours and hours and hours. But he never forgot that rug and to come up in my room and face east and pray. It was edifying, unbelievable.
Her statement is an expression of apostasy. The Catholic Church officially teaches that Islam is an abomination and a diabolical sect, Popes Eugene IV and Calixtus III. Since Muslims reject and blaspheme the Holy Trinity and the deity of Christ, they of course don't worship the one true God. They are in fact, quote, godless and, quote, pagans, according to papal teaching. Popes Pius II and Calixtus III. Islamic prayers and, quote, worship are not praiseworthy or edifying, as the heretic Mother Angelica would have one believe, but rather abominations, a disgrace, sacrilegious, and displeasing to the divine majesty. Popes Pius II and Clement V. Just like her horrible statement praising a Jewish service in St. Patrick's Cathedral as awesome, Mother Angelica's assertion that Islamic prayers and worship are edifying clearly proves that she was an apostate who did not have the Catholic faith. Mother Angelica also broadcast, endorsed, and promoted the idolatrous Assisi prayer services and similar events. That's mortally sinful. It's apostasy. Only a thoroughly wicked person who rejects God and the Catholic faith would do such a thing. During those events, the worship of idols and prayer to false gods was conducted, endorsed, and celebrated. Mother Angelica promoted all of that. So, Mother Angelica was not a true Catholic. She was rather a deceiver, a heretic, and a modernist apostate who led countless souls astray. She did not belong to the Catholic Church, but rather the Vatican II sect, the prophesied end-times counter-church, which denies the true faith and leads people into apostasy. Mother Angelica did not adhere to the Catholic faith, but rather the false Vatican II religion. And what people need to realize is that there must be such figures in the Vatican II counter-church who will lead people astray. As part of the end-times deception, God will allow the devil to raise up certain semi-conservative figures who purport to be Catholic, who will promote some true things and some spiritual things, but they will get, quote, conservatives to swallow or be implicated in the apostasy of the counterchurch, such as what Anti-Pope Francis is promoting right now. Those figures will keep many people believing in the Vatican II counterchurch, thinking that there is hope and Catholicism there when there isn't. Mother Angelica was one of those figures. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Certainly, some people who hear this will consider this assessment of Mother Angelica to be wrong or too hard. Some people will be shocked by it. Well, that's because those people simply don't have the true Catholic faith and they don't understand true charity. They are going by what the world thinks, not by what God thinks. You must evaluate things by the teaching of God and His Church. The question is simple. Does a person need to embrace and preserve Catholic teaching or not? Is it necessary or not? Is a person like Mother Angelica allowed to promote heresy, false ecumenism, idolatrous Assisi prayer events, Protestant sects, or not? Is she above reproach because she started a television network, or not? The answers to those questions should be obvious. The people who deem this assessment uncharitable or harsh don't know what they're talking about. They are not only totally wrong, but they have abandoned Catholic teaching and principles in favor of emotion, human attachments, and the opinion of the world. That's why God allows such people to be deceived. The first condition for salvation is that one must hold the true Catholic faith and preserve it inviolate. The simple question is, did Mother Angelica adhere to what God reveals and commands, and did she profess the true Catholic faith? And the answer is a resounding no, for anyone who is familiar with Mother Angelica's career, who knows anything about traditional Catholic teaching, and is honest. EWTN is a vehicle for some of the worst of the post-Vatican II apostasy. You will find abundant examples of outrageous heresy and apostasy endorsed and promoted by EWTN and Mother Angelica in the files on our website. Besides promoting religious indifferentism and false ecumenism, Mother Angelica and her network totally rejected the defined dogma outside the Catholic Church there is no salvation. Mother Angelica actually called that dogma a heresy. She said, quote, "There was a heresy at one time that you had to be Catholic. Otherwise you didn't go to heaven. That is not what the Church teaches."
There was a heresy at one time that you had to be Catholic, otherwise you didn't go to heaven. That's not what the Church teaches. All people are saved by the merits of Jesus, the grace in the Church. But they don't have to be Catholic. We hope they're all Catholic. But many people are of different religions, no religion.
Anyone who says such a thing about the Church's teaching is not Catholic. The Church most certainly teaches that people must be Catholic to go to heaven. The truth that no one is saved outside the Catholic Church and without the Catholic faith is a dogma that has been defined numerous times by popes from the chair of St. Peter. It must be believed, as Vatican I taught, exactly as it was declared. It cannot be rejected without committing mortal sin and heresy. However, heretics like Mother Angelica deny it. As another illustration of EWTN's denial of Catholic dogma, its show The Journey Home treats conversion to the Catholic faith from Protestant sects merely as a preference, but not a necessity. This heretical and evil idea that adhering to Protestant sects which reject the teaching of the true Church does not bar one from heaven is articulated by basically all of the so-called converts from Protestantism featured on The Journey Home show. They all believe that Protestantism, even though it is inferior, is still a way to salvation. But that is not true. The Catholic Church does not teach that Protestantism, which rejects the papacy and much more, is just a nice form of Christianity. No, it teaches that it is heresy that kills souls and leads people to hell. The so-called converts featured on EWTN are not true converts to the Catholic Church at all, but false converts to the Vatican II religion. Mother Angelica, of course, also accepted the invalid new Mass and all the heresies of Vatican II. She promoted and endorsed many notorious heretics such as Father Benedict Rochelle, who openly rejected Catholic dogmas, frequently preached in non-Catholic churches and synagogues, and even turned away people who expressed interest in converting to Catholicism. Mother Angelica promoted the deceiver and fraud, quote, Father John Carapi. By the way, long before John Carapi was exposed and documented to be a total fraud, we publicly identified and denounced him as a wicked phony. That happened before basically anyone else said anything like that about him. We denounced him when it was extremely unpopular to do so, and we were condemned by many followers of EWTN and others at the time. Some time after that, however, personal facts came out about Carapi that exposed him before the world as a total fraud and proved our analysis to be totally correct. Although Mother Angelica did not do some of the horrible things Karapi did, they were both notorious heretics. They both accepted the false ecumenism and indifferentism of the Vatican II counterchurch. And we could go on and on with examples of heresies and false doctrines promoted and endorsed by Mother Angelica. Mother Angelica did not profess the true Catholic faith. We wish she had been different. However, she was a modernist deceiver whom the devil used to pump life into the whore of Babylon, that is the Vatican II sect, which is not the Catholic Church, but the prophesied end times counterchurch. As I said, there must be such figures. The price people pay for receiving not the love of the truth, for not adhering to the traditional Catholic faith as defined and taught by the Church, for not judging all things by the rule of the magisterium, which would lead them to the true conclusions and the true positions, is that they wind up following heretics like Mother Angelica into the apostasy and religious indifferentism of the Vatican II counterchurch, and they lose their faith and souls as a result. It's also interesting to note that Mother Angelica's personal programs, such as her Mother Angelica live show, were typically so lacking in substance, so worthless, so boring, so focused on trivial matters or making her audience laugh at unimportant things, that they were, in our view, pathetic. This is not to suggest that laughing at unimportant things is necessarily wrong, but if it constitutes the bulk or a large portion of one's message to the people, then there's a big problem.
I never in my entire life saw anybody who looked less like a bartender. And then he said, I'm sitting there, I'm moving out to the far side. And then he said, and you know she's a pool shark, too. And I did know that when she plays pool with the men in the shelter, she wipes them off the table in three minutes. I wish 60 Minutes had been there or something. It was the most far-out thing I think I ever saw.
Well, I started drinking beer when I was 5.
When did you give up?
Many years ago. No, really, my grandfather wanted to get rid of me, and he had a big saloon. And he'd give me a small little mug, about that big. And it had a collar on about that big, wasn't much in it. And I would go out and he'd give me some pretzels, and any Italian would say, get lost. So I'd go out and sit in the curb and drink my little mug of beer and eat my pretzels. And one day the Salvation Army came. Well, I didn't know who they were, and I thought they were entertaining me. But they stood in front of me a good 15, 20 minutes, and I drinking my beer and eating my pretzels. And I wave at them every so often, and they were praying for my salvation.
It worked.
It worked.
Her programs were usually worthless because they were the products of a dead soul. What's amazing is that so many people remained glued to them, and thus frozen in the counterchurch, rather than losing interest in her lifeless message, and searching instead for things which provide more substance, more material relevant to the truths of God and the Catholic faith. It speaks to the sad fact of how few savor the truth and are attracted to what's important. Accepting what Mother Angelica and EWTN did, especially on salvation and other religions, is incompatible with the possession of the true Catholic faith. Believing what Mother Angelica did, such as that Jewish services are awesome, will necessarily result in a person's damnation, unless they repent and convert. God abominates people who accept false ecumenism or religious indifferentism, as those positions reject Him. The fact that Mother Angelica died on Easter, which many will undoubtedly wrongly interpret as a sign of divine approval, is simply the continuation and the culmination of the deception God allowed Mother Angelica to represent throughout her life. We don't believe it's an accident that she died on Easter. No, we believe that God arranged it to punish the outrageous bad will and the faithlessness of false conservatives in the Vatican II counterchurch. As 2 Thessalonians 2 says about our period, quote, because they received not the love of the truth that they might be saved. Therefore God sends them a strong delusion, so that they may believe what is false, in order that all may be condemned who did not believe the truth. End quote. Notice, because people receive not the love of the truth, God sends them the delusion. The delusion and the deception come from God. He wants them to be deceived, because they rejected His truth first. This applies to the obstinate followers of EWTN and countless similar individuals in the counterchurch. God detests how those people ignore his rule of faith, how they ignore the teachings of his church and the magisterium. They ignore the apostasy, the idolatry, and the indifferentism of the antipopes. They don't care about the issues of faith. They ignore the heresies endorsed and promoted by the wicked Christ rejecter Mother Angelica and EWTN. So he says, okay, to further deceive you, in punishment for your outrageous bad will and faithlessness, I will allow your, quote, hero to die on Easter, just so that you can think you will be saved following EWTN and the Vatican II religion, when the truth is that you will end up in hell. And the only way you can come out of this deception is if you start to pay attention to and believe in the teaching of my church, if you start to care about the rule of faith, the magisterium, if you start to reject heresy, idolatry, and false religions, if you begin to receive the love of the truth, that is, if you accept and heed the rule of faith I established to guide my people, the traditional teachings of the church, then you will come out of the deception of the Vatican II sect. Then you will come to the knowledge of the truth. But as long as you resist that or ignore it and choose to follow other things, I will send you more deceptions to confirm you on your false path to hell, such as the death of the wicked apostate Mother Angelica, who promoted false ecumenism and religious indifferentism on Easter. That's what's happening. Indeed, the timing of this is particularly interesting and fits perfectly with these points. We are in a critical period right now. Anti-Pope Francis's complete rejection of the Catholic faith could not be more obvious. He comes out with astounding acts of heresy and apostasy all the time. He is preaching a totally false religion that is incompatible with the true Catholic faith, and it's just going to get worse for the followers of the counter-church. Francis will continue to do more things like this. Their assertion that he leads the Catholic Church will become more ridiculous, absurd, heretical, and indeed blasphemous every week that goes by, as Anti-Pope Francis will continue to do more outrageous things and preach his false religion. His activity will continue to astound followers of the Whore of Babylon. It will leave them in shock and wonder, unable to figure out why this is happening, exactly as Apocalypse 17:8 says about the followers of the Whore of Babylon and the beast, as our material explains. Anti-Pope Francis's astounding apostasy, which should indicate to a person with even a small amount of goodwill that he's not Catholic and that people must leave the Vatican II counter-church and embrace the true Catholic faith, is causing many to evaluate the situation and look into the facts about it. If they choose to embrace the true faith, then they will be able to escape the eternal condemnation that awaits those who follow the false religion of the Vatican II sect, the Whore of Babylon. So God allows the false prophet Mother Angelica to die on Easter to see what people will choose. Will they choose to remain under notoriously heretical anti-Catholics such as Anti-Pope Francis and his apostate, quote, bishops, simply because Mother Angelica died on Easter, as over 100,000 people do every year? Or will they accept the traditional Catholic faith, that is, what has always been believed and taught by the Church, and the positions that flow from it? That's the choice for those people. Making the wrong choice has eternal consequences. A few days after her death, Francis gave a, quote, blessing for Mother Angelica, claimed that she is in heaven, and pointed to the sky. One should see how the confluence of these events is intended to keep people who admired Mother Angelica in the counter-church and following Anti-Pope Francis's apostasy. Also, there are surely some weak, quote, traditionalists who denounce Mother Angelica's promotion of false ecumenism, Vatican II, and the new Mass, but still think that she could have been good and saved. No, if Mother Angelica, who endorsed and broadcast the worst parts of the Vatican II apostasy to the world, can be saved doing what she did, then none of this matters. None of these issues matter. The Catholic faith doesn't matter. In that case, one could just go join EWTN, accept the new Mass, accept Vatican II, or even become a Protestant or Jew, for EWTN teaches that Protestants and Jews can be saved. If Mother Angelica can be saved believing, promoting, and doing what she did, then it's all meaningless, which of course is not true. To be considered as having died a Catholic, Mother Angelica would have had to have given some evidence of repentance from her heresy and apostasy in the external forum, for certainly she was a public heretic during her life. She gave no evidence of repentance or conversion before her death. According to Catholic teaching and principles, therefore, she cannot be considered as having died a Catholic. She cannot be considered as one of the faithful departed, but as a heretic who is condemned, and no Catholic may pray for her. It's also quite interesting that during a storm years ago, the cross on top of Mother Angelica's, quote, shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament was cut off cleanly at the top. The church for this shrine cost about $50 million to build, and Mother Angelica dubbed it, quote, the temple. The clean removal of the top of the cross during the storm, which many saw as an act of God, happened at a time when Mother Angelica's heretical network was aggressively pushing the false ecumenism and apostasy of anti-Pope John Paul II. We agree that it was an act of God. The clean removal of the top of the cross was God's way of marking Mother Angelica and her temple as non-Catholic, as representatives of the Antichrist Vatican II counterchurch, which is not the Catholic Church but the end-times whore of Babylon, and part of the beast.
Did you know that we had a Jewish service in St. Patrick's Cathedral?
When? For the funeral?
The night before the cardinal was buried at 9 o'clock. Many of the Jewish community and principal rabbis had a service in the cathedral for the cardinal. An incredible thing, right?
That's awesome.